What's up, gang? Your guy D here, bringing you another tutorial video. We're going to be talking about how to remove nubs in various ways. So first thing you're going to want is your selection of tools. Of course, you've got your nippers, good selection of sanding sticks, shapes in various sizes and styles, sanding pads, believe it or not, some good cement, liquid stuff, and a selection of cutters. So I keep different blade styles on hand, including trusty razor blade if your folks and or you trust yourself with them. Let's get started, shall we? So in today's tutorial I'm using a black kit, mainly because the nubs are going to show up a lot easier on this, especially on film, to give you an idea of what you're looking at. Of course, first you want to remove the part from the sprue. There's a couple ways you can do this. One, you do it a couple millimeters off the part to give yourself some wiggle room. Cuts down on the stress of the plastic, which is what causes the nub marks. So these are what's called anvil or one pull cutters. They have a blade on one side and an anvil on the other. Has a couple safety stops there. This minimizes the amount of pressure being put to the part, especially when you do cuts like that. Some people, and you may see me do this at build meets, just cut flush with the part anyway, because I don't mind removing nubs. So what you're left with is a little bit, even on that little flush cut there, you're going to have sprue, especially on the end of that peg. Now pegs, no big deal, they're going to be hidden anyway, but for the purpose of this tutorial, it's going to show all the techniques. So one, I'm sure you guys have seen or heard about using your thumbnail. So you just rub that across. Now, I'll use this technique simply because it always lets me feel where the nub is and how much I have still to clean up. So sometimes you see me do this, I'm not removing the nub, although in softer plastics it does work. But in most cases, I'm doing it to tell me where the nub is. So when you feel yourself got a little bit of a nub, you want to apply your knife in a slicing fashion, like so. And the reason you do it this way, instead of just chopping at it, is it slices it, which makes less friction, generates less pressure and heat, thus making the nubs bigger. Also, when you chop into it, you tend to gouge out the part. I'm sure some of you have been there. So you want to give it a nice slicing motion, and just little bits at a time. Then give it a pass with your thumbnail and see where you're at. Now, of course, there's still a little bit there. You're never going to fully get rid of them without some kind of extra work. Tri-grit sanding sticks are a thing of beauty. Sometimes you can go with just 2 of the grits. You don't need to go the ultra fine. Although this part came out polished, so using the polishing end would actually be beneficial. But most parts you could use just the 2 grits on the one side. Try to do circular motions as often as possible. It just balances out the blending of the scratches that the sanding makes. And like I said, since this one's a polished, we're going to go ahead and go in there with the 3rd grit. Just little bits at a time. You don't need to go heavy with it, don't need to go crazy with it. Don't even need that much pressure, really. And there you go. Nub completely removed. Sometimes you might still have a little bit of that pale in there, and again, that's why I'm using a black kit to show you that no matter what type of cutters you use, you're always going to have nub marks. Now there's a couple ways we can go. A couple fun little tips and tricks to get rid of that, what technically it's called crazing. Some of you have heard lighter method. Yes, fire bad, but used in well control, you can really get that off of there without much drama. Now, of course, I've practiced this technique, many times to get to that level. Plus, it's keeping it distant and then bringing it in. But hey, you're not always allowed to either get or use your lighter. So, what else do you use? Well, there's other various things. Let's take this one here, a little end of that peg there. It's got a bit of white on it. So Gundam markers or good old Sharpies, colored Sharpies, could come into play. You draw on there and then give it a quick wipe, and then the nub disappears. Now, some of you who have seen me at build meets and things like that know that I am known for carrying my bag of colored Sharpies, and this is why. Because sometimes you're working on a green kit or a red part or a black part, but you get ink all over your hands. Now, another one, which we'll use this little end right here, which still needs shaving. Sometimes the shaving does enough for you, especially on white parts. White parts, just shave it and run. So now we got that one. A little bit of watery, really thin, really fast acting cement, and get as much of there off of there as you can, because you don't need much. Give it a little dab. Now bear in mind, when you're using cements, they take about 10 to 25 seconds to set. But as you can see, it's already done its job. But it does soften the plastic, so the last thing you want to do is touch it. That's how you clean up nubs. All the different methods. Now, what method do I most commonly use? Honestly, at build meets, I do the colored marker look, because it's just, if it's a straight build, nothing major, it's all in your clipping and your shaving technique, try grit stick and things like that. If I'm doing a serious build where I'm painting, honestly, I don't care, because it's going to be painted over. So if you're going to be custom painting your kit, just worry about cleaning the nub off. Don't worry about any of the crazing. So, because it's not going to matter, because you're going to coat it anyway. Model kit plastic is porous. Under a microscope, it looks like a sponge. So that's why sometimes when you ink things, it smears and it runs and leaves a stain. So whenever you're cutting and shaving, the same thing happens. But if you're painting, it doesn't matter. If you're straight building or box building, colored marker is the way I usually go, simply because it's a good blending technique. The Gundam paint markers are also a great alternative, simply because they make them in all the colors of the Gundam kits, pretty much. Again, dab just a bit on there, wipe off the excess. But the color markers, especially Sharpies, or alcohol-based markers, tend to be a little bit better because they actually tint the plastic. Again, because it's like a sponge on a microscopic level. So you get better cleaning out of it. And then just give it a, run over with your thumb, make sure you got all of that stuff off there. That's how you clean up those nubs. Now, the dreaded clear parts. As some of you have come to learn, this type of plastic is very brittle. So you get those crazy marks like crazy. So with these, you definitely want to cut away. You want to give yourself a good 2 or 3 millimeters on that. Reason being, it's so brittle that it's going to create stress regardless. As you can hear, it cracks more than it just slices. So with these, it's where our friend Mr. Razor or super sharp blades come into play. So the rest of the nub you want to get off with either a brand new scalpel blade or razor blade or razor knife, anything of that nature. And you, again, you want to cut in a slicing manner. You don't want to chop. You don't want to guillotine it. And sometimes it may take several passes, and you know what, that's fine. If you're worried about using razor blades, something like these extracting or extending blades work really good. You just make multiple passes, and it's easy to always have a fresh blade on there. The trick here is just be patient and not be heavy-handed with it. Okay? And while looking at it, I see I got a little bit of a burr on there. There we go. Especially some of these clear parts these days, man, they come with such detail on them. So the last thing you want to do is craze and butcher it, right? So here, try grit standing sticks. And you got your shaping and profile side. And then you get your first step polishing side. Now, the lighter trick can work on this, for those of you brave enough to do it, or those of you who want to practice and learn that technique. It will work, but again, because this stuff is brittle, it means it's a higher density, which means there's more to melt and react before you know it. So, there you are. Like sharpening teeth on a chainsaw. Well, technically it's what I'm doing. Only I'm not sharpening, I'm removing nub. This last little one here, I'll use the lighter method for you guys. So you can see a little bit of shine right there. And even then, it dulled some of the detail. So, again, you want to be very careful with that whole lighter method. I think that one got cracks down further than I wanted. You don't want to use the glue method, I'll tell you that. Because it will melt and it'll cause more micro cracks. Again, because this stuff is very dense compared to, your regular run-up styrene. So by applying glue, especially model cement, to it, it actually makes it worse. It may look great at first glance, but trust me, when it dries, it's going to look worse. Now, one thing you can do, a type of glue you can use, is clear canopy, PVA, or white cement. It doesn't attack the plastic, it's water-based. Now this stuff takes forever to dry. And this comes out milky white, obviously. But you can work that in there. Some people use Pledge Floor Care Plus, the non-lemon scented stuff. And it's not only great for making the best and most durable clear coat ever, it will also fill micro cracks and even makes these scenes shine 3 times better than they did out of the package. So as you can see, clear parts, no damage, looks good, and you're ready to build on. So that's nub removal. Just a quick note about tools. You don't need the most expensive tools on the market to produce a good job. You will have to work a little bit longer at it, a little bit more sanding, a little bit more bravery, a little bit more ink. So, but better tools, don't be discouraged. You know, you can pick up better tools later on. The core is learning the techniques, learning the basics. That way, when you do get your tools later on, you grow with them, and it does make your life a lot easier. If you start out with $80 nippers right off the get-go and you still have nub marks, well, one, you're out $80, and two, you're very discouraged. When you could have spent $7 or $8 on nippers and at most $12 on a good set of sanding sticks and get the same result. And you've learned a good skill, how to control your sanding and how to control your cutting without breaking the bank. So trust me, all this comes in time, and all this comes with a lot of knowledge that you're going to use in kits down the road, whether it be Gunpla, traditional model kits, scratch build, resin kits. Especially if you're going to build vintage Gundam kits, man, you're going to need these techniques. So it's good to have these techniques. It's good to learn and practice with them. And trust me, you're going to build a lot of kits. So you're going to have lots of chances to practice. And each kit is going to get better and better, and you get more and more confident. I've seen the guys out there do it, and we have a blast doing it. Hope to catch you at the next local build meet. Till then, do like you do, model on.